Before it would become Alien Covenant, earlier ideas for a sequel to Prometheus included a visit to Paradise, the Engineer Homeworld, where concept artist Khang Le envisioned biomechanical cities that rose from the water in an alien landscape inspired by H.R. Giger. Ridley Scott was already teasing a sequel to Prometheus in 2012, one that would move even further away from the Xenomorph and LV-426, saying that it wouldn't connect directly to Alien and instead would follow David and Elizabeth Shaw to Paradise. In 2014, Khang Le provided concept art for what was then called Prometheus 2. In September of 2015, the name would be changed to Alien Paradise Lost, and 2 months later, in November, they would settle on Alien Covenant. He isn't credited with work on the film, but he did work in their art department, and his concepts were amazing, and they really stood on their own as the only images that would show the Engineer City as a biomechanical metropolis, echoing the mystery of the Juggernauts and the derelict on LV-426. It was Giger's legacy reborn, a biomechanical alien paradise. If this is paradise, it's not one fit for humans. The images portray a dark, wet, and humid place, the perfect environment for an alien, as hives are typically constructed in similar conditions. The skyline is dominated by phallic towers with egg-shaped domes. There are even dorsal pipe-like extensions on some of the buildings. In all three versions of the city, Giger's influence is everywhere, but they do have different takes on the Engineer Temple at the center. In Covenant, it's a massive domed building like the Roman Pantheon. But here, it feels like an enormous multi-floored biomechanical factory that looms over its surroundings. In another, it's like a phallic version of the Kremlin. And in the last, it's more alien, with a massive silo or egg-like structure that is flanked by ribcage-like towers. And all of it looks grown rather than built. Just like in Covenant, David and Shaw arrive in a juggernaut. But this time, David's bombing of the Engineer City is even more theatrical, with David walking amongst the chaos with his arms raised in triumph as the black pathogen rains down, annihilating the creators of those who made him. The engineers in the immediate vicinity are taken over quickly as their bodies are torn apart and turned into lifeless charred husks. In another scene of horror, we see a group of smaller engineers like the ones found on Planet 4 in Covenant. To Ridley Scott, the inhabitants of Planet 4 are engineers. He has yet to explain the differences in the engineers from here in LV-223, but it's possible that the larger of the two has been modified with the pathogen. They are decimated like the ones seen in the bombing around the feet of David, except we don't see the same kind of pathogen damage, and instead, we see a sickly group that's gaunt, wasted away, and bleeding out onto the ground. The image is titled Brainburster, and in the one living host, we can see that they are in great pain, as the side of their head bursts open, with red worms spilling out, while another bulge can be seen in the side of its chest. Upon closer inspection, the parasites have a facehugger-like head, with 8 limbs, around a fleshy mouth with teeth, yet no visible proboscis, though that doesn't rule out that they may have one. This unfortunate host has translucent skin, and you can see the parasites as they eat their way out. I'm not sure if this group was also infected by David's bombing, and that they received this infection as they were exposed to a smaller amount of the pathogen, because they were far enough away and/or they were indoors. This would line up with the Alien role-playing game, where victims of the pathogen bombings that are outside of the killing area are turned into anathema, but it's also possible that they were infected by other means. In the image titled Sick Engineers, we see an engineer with a painfully elongated head, blackened eyes, and dark veins all over. He's covered in bandages and his skin is damaged or breaking down on his arm. And behind him, a group of robed engineers gather, doctors or scientists possibly, and a duo can be seen in the far distance watching nervously, while a large egg-like object floats in the light. It's hard to tell what exactly is going on here. Is the sick engineer another victim of David's bombing? Or are we seeing something equally sinister, like experimentation with the pathogen? In Prometheus, the testing, storing, handling, and the seeding of the black liquid is performed by the larger and possibly modified engineers. And here perhaps, they serve a similar purpose as guinea pigs for experimentation. It begins in the early stage, with darkened eyes, black veins, and a bluish tone that appears to be developing underneath the skin. In the mid-stage, a green hue is blending in with blue coloration. The skin is becoming more translucent, and the darkened veins are now visible all over the body. The third stage is labeled Complete Breakdown. The head elongates and an exoskeleton has begun to form as the alien influences appear. The fourth stage is called a Reconstruct. Its head is now elongated to a tip like the Xenomorphs, and the face is beginning to blend into the skull. One hand is missing with snake-like tubes in its place, while others can be seen coming out of holes in the torso and on the foot. This wasn't done by David, as the engineer here appears to be in control with what is happening. He may even be part of some kind of ceremony, as in his hand is a black cup, like the ones that the sacrificial engineer willingly drank from, and he stands proudly, gazing towards the heavens with the confident pose that is held throughout the transformation. The final stage of this experiment could be these white translucent alien hybrids in the image titled Disease, where there appears to be the remnants of an engineer skull underneath its milky white dome. This isn't the planet from Covenant. It has an environment similar to that of Xenomorph Prime from the Dark Horse comics with its massive shallow lakes and humid environment. And it has structures like the one seen in Aliens Apocalypse, the Destroying Angels, which were inspired by the work of H.R. Giger and his designs for the derelict vessel. When the crew arrives at the biomechanical city, they're surrounded by massive statues of engineers in armor or garments with the aesthetics of the Xenomorphs. Hats shaped like elongated heads, ribcage chest pieces, and flowing robes that resemble ovomorphs with dorsal pipe-like extensions. It's an overwhelming introduction to the planet, and it would have cost a ton to make, which is hopefully why it wasn't used. But I also think that the film could have been taken to another level with the fans and with the box office with this change of scenery. Instead of David working out of his lab in Covenant, here he has a much larger area to work in, with a massive telescope or orrery and enormous tables called egg tables. Surprisingly, someone else is in the room here with David, and it must be Elizabeth Shaw, who wasn't killed when they first arrived and lived after he bombed the planet. In Alien Covenant, her body would be used in the creation of his own alien, and she likely has a similar fate here. And she could be one of the unfortunate people who are part of a nightmarish image called Cocoon People, where human bodies are fused into a biomechanical wall, while David stands calmly, admiring his work. Another image of one of the egg tables features what is likely the progression of these human cocoons, who are now covered in some kind of semi-translucent membrane that is fed by multiple tubes. Up front, David is looking over a group of translucent eggs on a grid-like system. Inside of them are worm-like embryos, in a shape and color close enough to the parasite facehugger-like worms, that David could be using to create his own take on the ovomorph. There are two more images of David working on egg tables, and the first one is covered in strange growths, in various colors and shapes, all saturated and glowing. It all reminds me of tumors, and Matt Hatton, who also provided concept art for Alien Covenant, with large parts of it being used in David's lab, told AVP Galaxy in an interview that while working on David's drawings, that he was trying to show how David was making the alien. And in doing so, he mentioned that he was trying to explain the rapid growth of the creature, and that it may have been achieved through tumors. And in David's plant studies on the planet, there were plants with chitinous and fibrous materials that could be used as a way to rapidly increase the alien size. So David had some kind of tumor garden that he grew from Elizabeth Shaw, which was drawn and designed with co-artist Dane Hallett, but it wasn't used because it was considered to be too much. The other egg table is more egg-focused and less tumor-like, with strange tubes and larger structures that all interconnect. And then we have David in an image titled Egg Farming, as he stands inside of a circular rack system of egg sacs while examining one of the specimens more closely. From these horrors, we then see the early forms of the Xenomorphs as they begin to take shape. Pale, translucent forms with elongated heads of varying sizes, created from infected humans and engineers. They have smooth skin, no dorsal pipes, and hauntingly human or engineer faces that in many cases are still visible beneath their cowls. And through the images, a metamorphosis is taking place as David hones in and perfects his designs. And the alien becomes more biomechanical, inching ever closer to XX121. There's even an image of an alien with a detachable or secondary jaw like the Deacons and the Neomorph, which could lead to the inner jaw of the Xenomorph. This would all culminate in this piece, an alien that's darker and more complete, with a darkened dome and the beginning of dorsal pipes or spines on its back. The exoskeleton has covered the torso, but the arms and legs are still smooth and unarmored, It's nearly there, and looks a lot like the Necronom 4 biomechanoid that the alien is based on. The engineers having a home planet or an outpost that looks like an early city from Earth was a huge letdown for me, and likely for many of you as well. I wanted to see more of the biomechanical, as it's featured in their pressure and biosuits and in their spacecraft, so it should show up in other facets of their civilization. It's possible that these engineers had returned to their old ways. In David's drawings it hints at this, saying that they admired their original form. But the presence of the Mother Juggernaut and the fact that they welcomed David's Juggernaut as it arrived suggests that they never truly abandoned this advanced technology. Either way, the art of Khang Le is stunning, and I'd love to see more of it in the Alien universe. But more importantly, I think that the popularity of these images in the Alien community only shows how much fans would love to see an entire world inspired by H.R. Giger. Thanks for watching, take care, and I hope to see you next time.